Before the city remembered how to breathe, the house was quiet. She sat where the light behaved itself, a shaded lamp keeping the room honest. Ledgers lay open on the desk, pages marked by hands that never rushed and never trembled. Names, numbers, promises that didn't exist anywhere else. She closed one ledger and opened another. The pages whispered. Every house has a heart. This one beat on paper. The telephone sat silent at the corner of the desk. It had rung once that afternoon, brief, informational, the kind of call that didn't ask questions. Someone was coming tonight, someone she was expected to accommodate. No name, no explanation. By the time the first knock would come, soft, respectful, already rehearsed, everything that mattered would already be decided. Not the music, not the drinks, not the laughter. The rules. She had learned them early. The trick wasn't forcing doors open. It was building something people needed badly enough to knock, and then making them grateful for the privilege. The house hadn't woken yet, but it was close enough to feel. For now, this moment belonged entirely to her. Just a woman balancing accounts that had nothing to do with money, and wondering what she couldn't calculate. She rose when the house told her it was time. Not a bell, not a signal, a feeling. The kind you develop after years of knowing exactly how long anticipation can be allowed to breathe before it turns into doubt. The walk down the hall was practiced, not hurried, not slow. Her heels struck the floor in a rhythm that announced arrival without demanding attention. The door waited at the end, polished enough to reflect the truth back at you if you looked too long. Emerald silk settled against her frame like it had been trained for this moment. The fabric whispered when she moved, expensive enough to be heard. Clothes mattered. They always had. When she opened the door, the knight stepped inside. He was alone. They always were. And that made him serious enough. His smile arrived first, confident, rehearsed. She returned it, professional, measured. The kind of smile that promised nothing except acknowledgement. He wore his suit like someone who understood fabric and didn't care what it cost him. No tie. Collar open just enough to suggest formality was optional where he came from. When their eyes met, something passed between them. Not attraction, recognition. Behind her, the house glowed. Low light, warm walls. The suggestion of discretion without the insult of secrecy. A piano moved gently somewhere inside. Glasses clinked. Laughter drifted through the rooms, carefully modulated. "Come in," she said. As he crossed the threshold, she learned everything that mattered about him. The brief hesitation, quickly masked. The way his eyes took inventory, reducing space to value. The second too long he held his coat like armor. He moved through her house like he'd already drawn it once. Eyes sweeping exits. Where shadows gathered and where they didn't. She gestured toward the parlor. "Through there. Someone will take care of you." "And you?" the man asked, already assuming the answer. "I'm taking care of everything." She closed the door behind him and stood alone in the hall, listening to his footsteps dissolve into music and conversation. The afternoon call returned to her, not as words, but as a pressure she couldn't place. They chose the table. She allowed it. 2 men this time, nothing like the evening crowd. These arrived in daylight, through the back entrance, carrying briefcases that locked. They sat wide, confident, men who mistook familiarity for authority. She stood, not as a gesture, as a fact. They spoke first. Of course they did. She listened the way architects listen to demolition crews, interested, detached, already imagining what would replace the noise. One gestured broadly, painting futures. The other watched her face, waiting for leverage. She gave them nothing. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to counter, it was to define. 15%, not 30. Protection on Fridays and Saturdays. No front door entries. No contact with her girls. What would not happen mattered just as much. They would not set her hours. They would not dictate her clients. They would not mistake proximity for influence. The house existed because she willed it to. One of them laughed. That was his mistake. She slid the ledger forward. It fell open to a single week. Dates, names, amounts. A judge they both knew. A councilman one of them called family. The room shifted. Men who dealt in threats rarely knew what to do with proof. She closed the ledger, placed her hand flat on the cover. 15%, she said, and we won't revisit this. They stood slower than before. She didn't move. Power doesn't move to announce itself. The door closed. She waited, counting to 30, then crossed to the window and watched their car disappear before allowing herself a breath. Behind her, footsteps. She turned. The companion stood in the doorway. No knock, no announcement. "They don't like it," he said. "They don't have to." He stepped inside, not casual, not threatening, occupying space like someone used to being welcome. 15%, he said. Efficient, keeps them useful. You've been listening. I listen professionally. She didn't ask how he'd gained access. She already knew. You've done this before, he said. I do this every day. Not like this. He glanced toward the empty chairs. They're temporary. And you? I'm here to make sure you're not. There it was. What do you want? She asked. Continuity, he said, like a courtesy. Things are consolidating. I don't replace competent operators. I protect them. At what price? Cooperation when I ask for it. She didn't answer immediately. Access, he added, not interference. And I approve every conversation that happens here, she said. He considered, then nodded. They shook hands, brief, professional. When he left, she returned to the desk. The ledger still balanced. The house still ran. But the mathematics had changed. She had sold part of her independence to protect the rest. It was the only calculation left. The staircase wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. She climbed it alone, champagne silk catching shadows like secrets that hadn't decided whether to surface. Each step was familiar, not comforting, but earned. She had learned early that elevation came with thinner air, fewer witnesses, sharper consequences. Halfway up, she paused, not out of fatigue, reflection. There had been other paths once, quieter ones, safer ones. She had closed them herself, gently, the way you shut a door you know you'll never open again. Power asks for commitment. It doesn't care how politely you give it. At the top, the corridor waited, private, controlled, unforgiving. She straightened her shoulders and continued. Whatever she was becoming now, there was no descent planned. By midnight, the house ran on discipline. Corrections were quiet. expectations enforced by presence alone, a posture adjusted, a tone recalibrated, survival taught by example. Then she saw him sitting with Marie, too close. Marie laughed too brightly. She crossed the room and removed Marie with a lie neither of them questioned. "You said you wouldn't touch my girls." "I didn't," he said. "I observed." "She stays." "Of course. But if trouble comes looking for her, I need to know first." This was cooperation. She nodded. Armor, she was learning, worked best when it belonged to more than one person. When the last door closed, the house exhaled. She returned to the desk. Numbers shifted, a new line added. His terms? Still viable, tighter. She thought of Marie, of questions tomorrow would require, not because she wanted to, but because ownership now came with witnesses. Architecture released. The lamp went dark. The darkness didn't threaten, it confirmed. By morning, the city would move on. She already had.